Okay, so welcome back. Today we're talking about the South Korean film and Oscar winner Parasite and why I think it works. So we're talking about the South Korean film Parasite. So the movie worked for me on a story level, a confession. I didn't think I would like it. It had been recommended by a friend of mine, a trusted Malaysian friend, thanks very much. And then it won the Oscar, the first foreign language film to do so. So I felt obliged to watch it. And it was great. So much so that I watched it a second time the following evening. And it got me thinking, why did I like it? And why did it work? And I concluded, in short, it's all about the story. It had a very strong story from head to toe and a simple, compelling way to tell that story. So a brief summary of the movie itself. A poor family in the city, this is based in South Korea, set their sights on improving their lives by manipulating their way into the lives and homes of a wealthy family, by securing employment as a language teacher, an artist teacher, teaching the son of the wealthy family, and then a housekeeper and a chauffeur. So there are four people in that poor family, a son and a daughter and the parents. Now there are spoilers to this video, so if you haven't seen Parasite, I suggest you do so before you watch this video, otherwise you'll be disappointed. It will spoil your enjoyment of the story, so I suggest you stop watching and go and watch the movie. So why did I like it and what compelled me to make this video? I wanted to highlight three elements in particular. That's what I concluded were the most important things about the movie. So if you're a creative person, pay attention, because when you're crafting your own story, these are the type of things you need to bear in mind. And you can ask yourself, how does your own story compare? So I've grouped it under three main headings: character and their motivation, secondly foreshadowing, and thirdly the ending, or the choice of ending, how the ending was done. And then at the very end I'm going to talk about what the film means for me as storytelling through metaphor. I'll leave that to the very end there. That's metaphor and storytelling. Okay, character, I could go into enormous detail about the characters, but broadly speaking, the characters were split into clearly defined groups, i.e. the families. You had the wealthy family and you had the poor family. And each group had its own priorities and motivation. So not only were the characters in terms of the family groups strong, the poor family and the rich family, but there were strong and clearly defined individual characters within those families. Each had their own motivation as individuals within this family group. Now I could go into detail about each character, but that would take too long. But once you've seen the film, you'll understand what I'm coming from. They were all different in their own particular way. And another interesting point about the characters themselves, there were no baddies or villains. You liked everybody and understood their actions as individuals and as part of a family group. None of them were stupid. They were all, in fact, pretty smart and also pretty resourceful. So the wealthy family were resourceful by being wealthy. They were the business types, quite serious. The poor family were resourceful and clever in the way they brought about an improvement to their situation, albeit with dire consequences. And also the housekeeper, who wasn't part of the families, she was also resourceful for surviving so long within that environment and keeping up a professional appearance. And there were no minor characters as such. So in this way, the filmmaker, the storyteller, respected his characters. He did not look down on any of them at all. None of them was a device, a dramatic device within the story. They were all fully rounded characters as individuals as well as part of the larger group. So by respecting the characters himself and fleshing them out, he made the viewers respect them. And if the viewers respected them, then the viewers cares for them, which makes the ending all the more poignant, dramatic and impactful. And finally, the house was a character. It was almost a quiet, eerie, silent witness to what was going on. They were fighting over that space. It was an empty space, a sort of a stage for the human drama. It sat back and did nothing, but was always there, ever present, the theatre in which the drama unfolded. Okay, secondly, the foreshadowing. Now, if you've seen the film, you know there are a handful of surprises and twists in the story, but the viewer does not feel cheated when they happen. Sometimes you see films and stories and there is a twist that comes from almost nowhere, and you do feel cheated. But even though there are twists and surprises in this story, you don't feel cheated because they were foreshadowed, even very discreetly. Some examples, again there are many, but some examples. So the ghost in the basement, for instance. This is not such a shock when you hear that the housekeeper's husband was found living in the basement, because it's been foreshadowed by this reference to the ghost in the basement, even much earlier in the film. And then you have the Morse code. So that is introduced early on in the film, quite innocuously, with the faulty light. But then it becomes more important in the second half of the film when you realise that the husband of the housekeeper in the basement uses it as a way of communication. And then it becomes crucial at the very end of the film when it becomes the only way the husband of the poor family can communicate to his son. And finally, in terms of foreshadowing, the violence at the end of the film is shocking and surprising, but because it's been foreshadowed, all the ingredients have been put in place during the film, you don't feel cheated. So of the 3 deaths, you had the daughter of the poor family murdered, but the groundwork was laid earlier in the film by the way the husband was treated and the way his wife was treated in the basement. Secondly, you had the father of the poor family kill the father of the rich family, and again, shocking though it was, it had been foreshadowed. There had been references to the smell of the father, and he took it as a personal slight, not only a slight on his class, but his whole being, something he'd lived with all his life. So it's referred to by the father of the boss discreetly and emphasised again by the mother of the boss in the car. So when he snaps, it was credible. You didn't see it coming, but when it did come, you accepted it. It made sense. Okay, and finally the ending. Firstly, the ending wrapped it all up. It did not compromise at all. Everybody loses. There are 3 deaths, 1 in each group of the characters. The rich father boss is stabbed at the party. The poor family's daughter is stabbed by the housekeeper's husband. And the housekeeper herself is kicked down the stairs and bangs her head and dies. All were foreshadowed, and they're not random. But it is violent and it is quick, which brings me on to the next point, the speed of the ending. It doesn't dally. So you're still reeling from the shock of the violence and the 3 deaths, which happen very quickly. But then the story moves on to wrap it all up. After the initial act of violence, you have the scenes in the hospital, and then you have a court trial, and then life afterwards is covered very quickly. So while you're still recovering from the violence, you're fed all this information, which wraps it up very succinctly, which makes the ending very impactful. And finally, the very, very end, the story has come full circle. So the father of the poor family is trapped in the basement. The filmmaker, in a moment of playful misleading, shows the son rescuing his father by buying the house, and then you realise it is only a plan, it's a dream, he's dreaming it. So it reminds you of the mountain the son has to climb to free his father. So everybody's trapped. There's a sort of moral in the story. The first one is be careful what you wish for. Secondly, be grateful for what you have. And thirdly, the importance of family. They've lost it all. Both families have lost. In other words, greed and desire to acquire wealth can lead to a whole host of problems. And so there you are. So those are the 3 things that I thought were particularly strong in this film. So you had the character, then you had the foreshadowing, and then you had the ending being fast and tight and hard without any compromise. And I thought that was all working towards a very effective film storytelling moment. And it reminds you of if you get the characters right, and if you respect them, and if you deliver them, and you don't have them as a mere plot device, you flesh them out, then that can be a foundation for a very strong story. Okay, one final thing, metaphor in storytelling. Now, of course, Parasite is beautifully framed, paced and edited. All the craft elements are there. I'm talking about some of the storytelling elements. So the film starts off as a type of sting, or a successful heist movie, if you like. Then the second half moves into a thriller, drama, tragedy of failure. The second half works because everything in the second half, the thriller part, has been laid down and foreshadowed in the first half of the movie, as I've explained. What was relatively minor in the first half becomes central and enormously significant, such as the housekeeper, the basement, and the scholar's rock. Firstly, the housekeeper, who was a minor character who we thought was being dumped not only from her job but also from the narrative. She becomes central to the second half of the story and its climax. The basement, which hardly features at all in the first half, becomes a central element in the second half of the film. And thirdly, the scholar's rock, which was meant to promise wealth, a little gift given to the son in an early scene to bring him good fortune. Which all leads me on to the one final thing, the metaphor for life. What you think might be central to your plan becomes insignificant when compared against the little things you did not consider, the little occurrences or the little meetings or interactions that have a massive impact. And these are the people, the places, and the aspiration. In this instance, the housekeeper, the basement, and the scholar's rock. The poor family gambled on a plan, and it worked in the first half, but then life, as it does, threw in a few spanners and messed everything up. But what made it so tricky or so dangerous in this instance was that the collateral that the family had gambled with was in fact the family itself, albeit unwittingly. They placed their own family on the roulette wheel, betting on red or black. But who or what was the other player in the game? Life. They were playing against life. So many people see the film as a commentary on class, and I know many South Koreans see it and talk about it in that way. But as a foreigner, I saw it more of a story with a grander message, a fable almost. Its message is like the old saying, how do you make God laugh? Make a plan. So beware of gambling your life away on a plan. And as the father says towards the end of the film, after the flood, the only plan that succeeds is no plan. So for me, the film is a poignant warning through its metaphors. If you aspire to rise, then brace yourself for the fall. The rock, symbolising ambition, aspiration to wealth, is the one item that the son saves from his flooded house. And it is that item that is used as a weapon by the ghost in the basement, the husband of the housekeeper, to literally crush the young man's head. His aspiration for wealth is responsible for his brain damage. Damage, ironically, that makes him laugh. It is as if God, or the storyteller, is saying your dreams, your aspiration for wealth will crush you, and all to the soundtrack of laughter. You could say the rock is a metaphor for a hopeful life, for dreams, for wealth. But life and rock is by its nature hard, solid, almost immovable. It cannot be manipulated. It in fact symbolises the irony. The thing you aspire to ends up killing you. And as for the basement, before you scheme your way into the house of your dreams, always check the basement. You don't know what's hiding there. So the movie is called Parasite. So who or what are the parasites? For me, it is the desire for wealth and social mobility that is the parasite. It preys on the human victims. We feed on hope and aspiration, but it feeds on us. In fact, it kills us in the end. Hope and aspiration kills us in the end. So for me, this is why the movie reaches into the viewer. It manifests a truth that we all deny. Hope, desire, aspiration. It all kills us in the end.
문제라고 생각하지 않아요?
우리도 뭔가 준비를 해야겠다.
너는 계획이 다 있구나.
So there we are. What do you think? If you agree, there are many things I could talk about the film, but if there was something in particular you think I should have covered, another factor that was very important and works in the success of the film, let me know in the comments below. Okay, thank you. Check my other videos out, and also check the books, the short stories, volumes 1 and 2, and also Nigel has just been released. My Name Was Nigel has just been released, so do check that out as well. Everything's in the description. Do subscribe and support me as you can, share and like, blah blah blah.
davidozeus.uk